Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Thriving Adoptees podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Dottie Todman. Looking forward to our conversation today, Dottie.
Me too. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So, does the word healing, does that resonate for you, Dottie?
Oh, yeah. That's a very important word.
Yeah.
Brings up a lot.
Yeah. It does. It does. It does for all of us, I think. What what does it bring up? What's the first kind of thing it brings up for you in terms of what it means to you, maybe?
Well, the first thing that I think of is love at this stage in my life where I am now. I think before it was more about um, physical healing because of so much trauma. But now when I think of the word healing and my healing journey, that was so much devoted externally, trying to have other people fix me versus the love that I wasn't able to receive. I think a lot because of how I came into the world and those challenges at such a young age.
Yeah. So physical love versus physical healing is like a counterpoint to internal love healing, or
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. It's an inner journey, and I really, more than ever now, knowing how much my relationship to myself, all the things we weren't taught, we were taught that, you should think nothing of yourself and very little. At least that's what I was taught. Don't be too full of yourself, and you know, you are what you do and what you accomplish in life. And I feel like most of us here, I mean, it's hard enough just coming into this world as a human being in a family with giant humans that are going to take out and project all their crap onto you, right? That's what everyone kind of comes in with. But being adopted kind of adds this other layer of complexity on top of that, where, and I'm just going to shut that off so it doesn't bug us anymore. It adds another layer of complexity because there's this separation thing that happens. There's a longing that happens. There's a lack of understanding of, who am I and why these people aren't, they're not like me. And I know that maybe a lot of other people feel that way, that, came into homes with parents that did give birth to them. But for me, my healing journey, I think it started as soon as all the wounds began, but I was unaware of it because I was not receptive to the love that was all around me. I didn't know how to, I mean, at first you kind of know how to take it in, right? But like, what's that saying? You can have all the water in the world that and it won't sink the ship unless it gets inside. But if you flip that and say there's all the love in the world, right? But it won't rise us up, it won't bless us unless it gets inside. And I feel like, as being someone, like when you're adopted, when there's any sort of something going on outside of the regular something, something as a kid growing up, it can get really sticky with how that love is received. And we all know that love really does heal. So I mean, it's as cheesy as that sounds, right? I have proof in my life. I have proof that that's a thing. It's not the physical, it's the inner, and the inner creates, I believe, the outer wounds and all of the other diseases and things that happen in a person's life. So,
yeah. Wow, there's so much there, Dottie. I like how do I've got about five different alternative questions off the back of that.
cool.
Um, so uh where do I go with it? Right, I'll go with my instinct. Right, we'll stick on the love thing. Right, so it's not about what they give, it's about what we receive. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, would you like me to share a little bit of my story to give a little bit of background so, and then I can kind of tie it in with how,
Yeah.
what the healing actually, like what created, what happened for me. Um, so coming into this world where literally my existence didn't make sense because, I was taken from my birth mother, put in an incubator because there were some complications at birth. And so I was in there for 2 weeks and I didn't have, there's like no human, I'm sure there's a human somewhere, but, so that separation from the mother that that can do stuff. And then I was put into a foster home and she was visiting that home, but after 6 months, she was told that I was adopted, and so, but I wasn't. I wasn't actually adopted until I was a year and a half old. So there was this sadness in me that never made sense. When I did get adopted, and I went to a white lady who, you know, she didn't really, I mean, back in those days, I mean, let me put it like this, they were old school. So I was raised by old school Canadian people. And they moved to a small community where there were no black people. Now, my mother was married to a black man, but they divorced when I was 11. And my mother's older sister, who was born in 1920, was a big part of our lives, and she moved in with us. She didn't like I mean, to this day, even though she's passed now, she'll say, I do like him, but she did not like my father. And my father was from the Virgin Islands, or is from the Virgin Islands, and he did not like children, but they already had a son. So they had a biological son. So he was black, and then my brother was beige, and then my mother was white, and then there was me, who was like also kind of black, black, black. And so I was like, for me, that's normal. Like, our family's the color of a rainbow. How fun. And I thought that that was interesting. And even though they gave love in ways that maybe didn't fully, I didn't feel fully accepted, but I felt accepted enough. I was a wild child. I had a lot of energy and wildness and writing songs and bouncing around. And my mother would be like, Dorothy, children are to be seen and not heard. And there was this sort of reverence, but attitude there that made me feel a little not accepted. But over the years, what happened in this family dynamic is, there was the divorce, there was, all of the hangups that people have, mental, emotional abuse, all that normal stuff. Apparently, that's normal these days going on in the home, and no understanding of why I was different. The hair didn't make sense, my skin color. Back then, we didn't have internet, so it was like, why? The only black people I saw were starving children, sadly, on the TV, the commercials of the kids in Ethiopia and Nigeria with the bulging stomachs, and I thought that was me because my stomach kind of protruded because I had some gastrointestinal stuff going on. Over the years, I developed something called endometriosis, which is now 1 in every 10 women have this horrible disease where every 20 days, like your cycle doesn't stay in the uterus, it goes outside of it and pulls on the organs and creates excruciating pain. And I would cry out in pain when I was at home, and my auntie and my mom would be like, oh, you're so dramatic, you're. And so between that, all of the racism that I faced in school and all of the other things that happened for me, what became my best friend or my parents was God. I was like, God is my dad. I love God. And my youngest understanding of God was, I remember when I was so tiny and thinking, God was this big glowy ball of light. It's this big glowy ball of light. And God, and I was like a little tiny ball that popped off of it. I just remember, this is so weird. It sounds so weird. But then they were telling me that God's this white dude in the sky and he has a beard. And I just thought that's so weird. But then there was this other guy, Jesus, that died. And I love Jesus and I got the Gideon Bible. But like all this stuff relates to like, well, how do I make sense of myself, right? So I created my version of who and what I thought God was, which still didn't make sense with what the rest of the world seemed to think God was, because it was some dude in the sky that was like Santa, that was like, you're good and I judge you, or you're bad. Like if you're bad, then you're being judged and you're going to go to hell forever. And if you're good, you're going to be loved. And that seems so conditional. And that was the same type of love I got from this family. But I didn't know who my real parents were. They told me I was adopted. So all of that, I feel like all of that plays a role in the psyche of a human, especially if you're adopted, because you don't know your roots. You don't get a sense of like, at least for me, especially like when there's not even teachers in school that are black, there's no role models at all. And then, except for Gary Coleman, and Tootie, right? So they're like kids my age or like older than me when I was a kid, right? So you see these people on TV and nothing made sense. Nothing made sense, but it forced me to carve out my own journey at a young age. And what I was rewarded for was singing. It was being able to sing, and I was writing music to comfort myself. So all of this information, right? Well, where do you get love? Oh, I'm singing, I'm on stage, I'm getting acceptance there. So that was a key for me to flourish in that area. But was I doing it because I love God and me, or was I doing it because I want to be accepted and fit in, right? So this is where I say the healing, when you ask me about healing, now looking back through, like we could go on a lot of different pathways. I don't know which one you want to go on. There's the endometriosis path, right? There's the psychological path of the spiritual journey and all that, which is sort of tied in. There's the singing. Hey, I could just ramble on forever. So
Okay. Let's go back to the love thing. I think that's so we're talking about love as the healing power.
Yes.
You're talking about love from within as different from love from without. The love of the crowd and finding love within. Something popped into my head earlier this week, which is, are we like we're seeking? Do we need to seek love outside outside ourselves when we realize we are actually love itself? If we are love, we don't need it from anybody else, right?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, we're also all connected, and so when you're in a relationship with someone, you can. How are you ever going to know where your triggers are, right? And your bumpy areas, that things that like where we're not loved, because everybody has that. Everybody has shadows, and when you're just on your own, which honestly for me I have been a lot of my life, you might get a false sense of I'm doing great, right? And then you get around someone and you're like, man, this person's driving me crazy. They remind me of my mother or my father or this or that. Like all of this is connected. So yeah, we don't have to have love when we realize we are love, but we can benefit from that because as we grow and evolve, right? We no man is an island, like they say. And I feel like maybe for some people, like if they've always been with other people or have all this comfort around them and love, and they're just, then it might be growth for them to be on their own and to know like I'm okay on my own. But then there are other people that have always been on their own, or that maybe have felt abandoned and learned to live through that might grow from having, that companionship and learning what is like, instead of, if they have avoidance tendencies, right? Like, I'm just going to avoid the pain. Oh, that wasn't pleasant. I'm done. Like, now I'm not love. And so I feel like part of this game down here on this planet is actually knowing when we are buying into a lie. And that's, I feel like, what you're talking about. When we don't feel loved, or like we are that love, which is pretty much happens to people every day, probably, right? There's always going to be something that irks you, or that's when we're buying into a lie. And that's when we got to do this formula that I discovered for me, that's helped me a lot. It's helped my singers. It's called core. You connect to yourself, you pop out or become objective and see yourself and go, I see that right now I'm buying into a lie and I am being triggered right now. I do not feel love. I want to kill this other person, or not really kill them, but I want to, or I'm really irked right now. What's going on for me? Oh, do I feel like I'm 9 again or 5 again? And the kids were picking on me when I was all alone and I had no parents to protect me? Or like, see, everything I feel like we do in our adulthood is oftentimes connected to protecting that child that we were when we were just little and helpless in the world, and we feel that way. And so we have to remember, as adults, we're not that kid anymore. And so when we can be objective and do that, and then do the R in core, which is tune into what you just said. We are loved. Our unique resonance, the R stands for resonate. I am a unique spark of the divine, right? And to really tune into what makes me unique and why I'm loved, that's something we got to remind ourselves of. Because if we don't remind ourselves, man, we're going to get swallowed up. This world is a crazy place. It can be. It's a beautiful place, but it can be a crazy, tough place because it's dense down here. And it feels dense because we are light, right? If we weren't light, if we weren't love, we would probably feel fine because we would just blend in with all the gook. But we feel heavy because we're light, and all the stuff around us can pull us out of that light. So it's kind of a big answer to what you asked, but like for me, that's how I remember. I connect. I learn to be objective and then have an objective. What do I want today? Oh, I want to bring light into the world. Oh, I want to share my gifts and talents. Oh, I want to help these people sing, right? That's what I get to do. But if I'm not in touch with my resonance, I can easily fall out and get deceived by other people's stuff, or feel their pain, or become way too empathic, which I was for years. And I went to every healer on the planet to try to fix my illness that I suffered for 33 years. 33 years of pain will teach you a lot of lessons. For me, my voice and that disease were my biggest spiritual tools. And my adoption, even though this sounds crazy, but in a way it was like a foundation for my soul to actually grow deeper, and I don't want to say faster because I feel like a late bloomer.
So you're talking about where do I go next on this one? What about you're talking about God as God is my dad when when you were a kid, and he's this big, and it's this big ball of light, which is kind of ironic when you're black, but do you know what I mean?
But I never connected to the black, right?
Yeah.
Because I didn't know what that was, so I just ignored my physical body.
Okay. So
So
you're
I
talking
was
about
about my
your
soul. Like, I just was like, I'm not even this. I am a ball of glowing light. What does that have to do with being any color?
yeah. That's a big question, right? That's a big question. Um, and I've had similar thoughts around that, but I've actually kept those to myself because I don't want to come across as racist, which is interesting, isn't it?
Oh, what are you gonna say?
Well, I would say, well, that big white light that God is, and you're the that's your dad, and then you said you're a little starburst. Did you say what was the you used the word
Like
that
just a
you're
little, yeah, a little a
a
spark of the
spark,
divine.
spark of the divine, right? Spark of the divine. I don't think sparks have a color. I mean, sparks,
Exactly.
yeah, sparks. We're talking about a non-physical self, right?
Yeah, that houses the biological spacesuit that we are. So I can see that spark in everyone. It's the same spark. Whether you're
Yes.
Asian, white, black, Indian, I don't care what color you are on the outside. That's just like having a glove and then the hands inside, that's the spirit, but the body's on the outside.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've heard this expressed as a meat suit.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So we've got a meat suit. Meat suits come in different colors, but the spark on the inside is all the same. We're all
It's
one.
yeah, it's connected. But it's not exactly the same because it's connected to the spacesuit. And that
Ah,
spacesuit has the DNA in it and it has intelligence. So God's like big. God's also like this magnet and God is also this. Like it's matter. It's well, I don't know if it's this because this isn't alive, but I guess they say stones are even alive, right? We could go into a whole talk on metaphysics and neuroscience, and we could get deep into that. But
yeah, yeah. So the the as the big ball, as God as the big ball of light, or what some people might call consciousness, would they? I mean, yeah. Um, that is, you're seeing a link between that and the star, the sparkle that comes off it, and then the sparkle that's sat inside the meat suit. And we're saying that God is. Are we saying that God is the same as love? Like, is that kind of what you're saying? That's the healing power.
yeah,
Do you remember the first time you felt that?
the love of God in that big way.
Yeah.
Well, when I was acknowledging that that's what God was, I felt it then. And then I I felt it in different ways, but the biggest, like the one that the real time that I felt it was after I had what I guess you could call it a near to death experience. And that's when they had nicked my bowel. And I woke up from it. That was in 2007. They nicked my bowel by accident. And when I woke up, I it was like all of the pain up to that point in my life, all the anger, all the frustration, all the fear and abandonment, and all that was gone. And I just felt so much love, that I knew that that there was this divine presence that was connected to us all. I also remember a time previous to that where this is going to sound weird, but so when I was a missionary for the church that I went to, this person that we were teaching put his hand, he was a Qigong master. So he studied the art of energy and moving energy, and we thought that was of the devil, like that. But this man put his hand on my forehead and he did something, and about 20 minutes later, my third eye opened. And the love that, like, I always thought love was here, and he would always be pointing, he's like, no, there's love, and pointing to his forehead. We just kind of thought he was kind of, and he
Yeah.
probably was a bit, but hey, you gotta love him. His name was Richard. And Richard taught us a lot, but the other time I experienced that was, yeah, when he put his hand on my third eye. I didn't know he did anything, and then 20 minutes later, I had to stop the car I was driving, and I was just filled with all this love. Those are the really two big times in my life, other than when I was having that moment of knowing. And in that moment that I was telling you about God being this big glowy light and me being this ball from the glowy light, I was probably like 3 or 4 at the time. It also told me why I was here. It was like, you are here to help humanity. This sounds so weird, but that's what I remember. I still remember that. It was like, you were here, and I'm like this 3 year old, and I'm like crying, but I'm not even with my family. I'm with these other people. So it was almost like something was showing me, like, don't worry, this is going to be kind of jacked up for a bit, but you're here. And then, like, over the years, things just have slowly been revealed to me. Like, there's been spaces in my life where nothing made sense. And then I'm like, oh, I have 5 sisters. In 2012, I find out, oh, you have 5 sisters. Like, my whole life, I thought I was by myself, weird stuff. My life's crazy that way. So I just kind of, at this point, I'm just like, love.
Yeah,
Simplify. Love. But if you start asking me questions, there a lot of stuff's going to come off, right? Because it's just all compacted in here in a nice little whatever Piscean ramble.
fantastic. Um, the sense is the sense of oneness with everything part of your love white shining ball experience. Is that part of it? Like we're all one, but because you said we're all connected,
Oh yeah, we're all connected.
but is that part of is that connection and oneness? Is that part of what the white ball has, what the white ball experience?
Yeah, I mean, I when I was little, that's how I saw it. It was just a big white ball. I mean, it was it was a big glowy ball of light. Like, but now I'm grown. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm not saying we're all in this. Well, maybe we are on this big glowy ball of light, But it was like, are you asking me now? Like, now, how do I see it, or is God or is love connected to the glowy ball? Is that what you're asking me, or?
Yeah, I'm asking you about the sense of connection because I have my story about this, and it comes about in a different way, and I'm just asking before I kind of rush in with my bit, right? Because I'm supposed to be interviewing you. I'm I'm asking you about this. Well, let me put it a different way then. Okay, so when do you remember having the first sense of us all being one? Do you remember when that happened? Remember that happening?
Yeah, the first time. That's the thing. I mean, I always thought that. And
Oh,
then
okay.
and then life comes in and it makes us see things differently. It's like it almost changes our perception. Our consciousness is shifted to believing we're small. But when I was little, right? And of course I had this longing, like I always longed for my mother, right? And that connection and that longing may have pulled me out of it. But when I was so little, you know, that it was everything. Like I could see it around everyone. It was everybody. It was in everyone. And but they didn't know. Like they forgot. Like they had all this other crap. And I feel like probably everybody might feel that. Like everyone might see that. And then no one talks about it. No one talks about all the glowy lights around people, but babies see that stuff. We sense it. It's who we really are. And then it's like we go through this veil of forgetfulness, and then we're just like, duh, let's eat some hamburgers. And like you turn the TV on, it's like, eat the hamburgers, eat the junk food, and drink some beer, and dumb yourself down. And people are just walking around like zombies, forgetting that they're these divine sparks, and thinking that they are what they do, versus they just already are awesome and they get to create. So when you ask me, like, when is that first moment, or when is that, it was Like if you say, well, I was like, it was on April the 10th, like I don't know when the day
Uh,
was, or I feel like for me, it was it was me, and then over time it just got smaller and smaller and smaller until I forgot, and I just thought I was a piece of crap. And I've been spending the rest of my life, right, learning how to get back to like remembering. And that's what healing is. That's what I think healing is. Healing is our journey of remembering who we really are and finding out what those psychological problems are. We call them psychological problems, but they're really just veils of forgetfulness, and being able to identify when we're buying into that lie, using tools like breathing and just getting back in the body. Because I used to hate my body. I hated my blackness. I mean, I was like, this isn't even black, it's brown. Why do they call it black? Like, nothing made sense, right? So you got to learn how to make friends with this. Is a beautiful vehicle. Our bodies are also part of God, and our bodies are far more intelligent than we can possibly imagine. And knowing that helped me heal. Knowing that my body can go beyond what my thoughts are, and knowing that God beats its heart through me. God is the heart beating through me. I'm not controlling that. It's like, how do you explain that? Right? So it's all like whatever it is that you could say, well, your parents created you, but yeah, then who created them? And you could just keep going back and back until it's like there's something beating that my heart. There's an energy there, and that life force is the God in us, that life force. So that was, again, another long answer from Dot.
Brilliant. Love it. Um, so there's a sense you have that felt sense of oneness, and then you kind of lost it, and then you found it again. Is that about it?
That sounds about right. And every day I continue to find it. I continue to strive to remember, because it's so easy. You can forget in an instant who you are. It's so easy to get pulled into the, web of affairs of life and get all caught up. Oh, I've got to do this thing, and this is important, and blah 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 blah. And then we get ungrounded and our muscles tighten because our we forget we're not present. But when I can stop and get really still, it's like, and I can literally feel now, I'm to the point where when I'm meditating or just sitting and being present, I can feel like when I think about a thing, I can feel oh wait, I'm tightening my jaw right now. I'm thinking of this thing, and then it's like, oh wait, come back in. Oh yeah. And it just relaxes back down. It's like, oh yeah, oh, I'm thinking of that person. I'm tight. Oh wait. Oh yeah, I'm here. I'm here now. I'm here.
Yeah. I had this feeling yesterday. It was a new feeling to me. It was a sense of warmth. It was actually an uncomfortable feeling, and it started on my jawline, and it went down my neck to where my neck joins my body. It was just in that little band there,
Mm.
and I never felt that before. Have you any idea what that was?
That's your
You
throat
need to.
chakra. Those are your digastric muscles. It's like a band that goes around your, like your swallow muscles. It's connected to your swallow muscles. When you had the feeling, did it feel, was it a pleasant feeling, or was
No,
it a tight, like a,
it wasn't. It wasn't tight. It wasn't slack. It was like warmth. It was like embarrassment. It felt like, when your face is red through embarrassment, but it wasn't on my face. It was just below my jawline, and it was
oh,
and I was it was to do. I'd uh, I'd upset somebody and I hadn't realized that I'd upset that person. And she was telling me that I'd upset him. And as this was happening, it was this feeling, as I say, started from my jawline all the way down, but only just on my throat. So it must be something to do with what I was saying. I don't know.
Do you remember what? Oh, so you were talking at the time this was happening?
I the so I she she gave me the feedback, shall we say? I was listening to the feedback, and I responded. Then she said something else, and we kind of like, but for a good 5 minutes, it was there. It didn't matter whether she was speaking or I was speaking. It's actually starting to come back now
Because you're thinking about it.
because I'm thinking about it.
What was the quality of your communication when you were talking with her? Was it awesome or was it awful? Did it express how you really felt or was it?
Yeah, good question. I, it was it was me being embarrassed and upset about the upset that I'd unintentionally and unknowingly caused.
And so you acknowledged that when you
Oh
spoke?
yeah, yeah. I took the thing. I
Excellent.
took it on board. I didn't say what you on about. You're mad. You're making this all up. I didn't say anything like that. I acknowledged it, and I shared. I acknowledged it. I tried to take it on,
Uh huh.
move it forward.
That's excellent. So what I'm picking up on is that that your throat chakra actually, if we want to call it a throat chakra, but basically it's opening, and it opened, and you were connecting to your heart. So that's actually a good thing, and that's how it feels. Though it feels kind of like when it does it, it feels like something's melting, and I feel kind of naked, kind of like that. But like just like if it's, and so these what everything that we say, think, and feel, the throat chakra, like your voice, this one is kind of like it's connected to all the other chakras. It's connected to all the lower chakras. And if any of them, when they fall out of alignment, it can kind of mess up your throat chakra a bit. When you come into a space where you acknowledge another person and you're listening and like, you're open and receptive, that is healing to you. That's good. But it can feel very strange because you may have actually been a lot tighter in this area before than you ever thought. And when you release the ability to want to control or do anything like that, and you just, yeah, feeling embarrassment's great because really it's just acknowledging, oh, like your ego is having a problem right now, right? It's like, oh, like it's just the ego. But it sounds, based on what you said, that you let go of that and you just dropped in. And and then when you drop in, I call it dropping in, like really being in our body. This lets go. And you're able to speak the words.
Yeah,
Does that resonate or?
it does. And the big word that's coming out for me to describe it was that was quite unusual for me. It's an unusual thing. You said strange. It was unusual. And listeners, if you're wondering why on earth we're talking about this, right? So, Dottie was um, a singer. You're still a singer, and she is also a vocal coach. So that's why I'm asking all these questions, because clearly um, she knows her stuff, right? And it's what Dot does is vocal coaching from a kind of a holistic approach rather than just practicing scales or breathing techniques. She's looking, you're looking at the whole, well, the whole body, the holistic side. Is that, I mean, how would you sum it up
Yeah.
in a
I
couple of sentences?
I didn't know that it was like that. I thought, you just sing, and I thought I'm going to be a vocal coach and help people to sing, and we're all going to join hands and sing hallelujah. And what I realized is, wow, like even my voice is blocked, and it is so connected to how I think and feel about myself and all of my childhood wounds and trauma. So through my healing journey, I took the tools and I was able to and am able to help other people as well. And I continue to work through my stuff. So when people come to me with vocal issues, I know that, from the accident that I went through and the healing from that accident, when you have a scar along your core, that's pretty much all your chakras ripped open, except for your heart. So you got to heal that area, and all of the healing involves a lot of understanding of where we're holding on to judgment, to pain, to guilt, to all the things of the past, not feeling accepted, worrying about what other people think. That's going to affect your voice. So now I've become very keen and aware of when people come to me with their vocal issues. I want to give them the exercises too, because those are important. But if they have a problem, you got to get to the root. Like if you just put a band aid on something, right? It's not going to, you can try to train it from the outside, but as soon as you put that person in a situation where it's like, sing, okay, we're in front of 100 people now, they're going to freak out if they haven't dealt with their feeling of how they're being perceived by other people. And that ties in with your real confidence. And when you really know that you are a spark of the divine, whatever you believe in, right? I'm a spark of something good. I mean, I almost think that people who don't believe in God, like, I don't blame them, because the God that I think man has tried to create to generate money through businesses that are so-called churches, right? Versus like, hey, let's just learn about who we really are, and like, hey, I totally love Jesus. Like I love Jesus. Like you could say I'm a Christian, but it might not be the definition of Christian, right? But when you start to understand who you really are, and what Jesus actually taught, what he actually said we can do, it makes everything easier. It makes everything easier because you're not a part of thinking you're small anymore and thinking you have something to prove. I have nothing to prove. I have nothing to hide. I have nothing to protect, and I have nothing to defend. Those four statements are pretty impossible. Like, I'm sure there's something in there we can all think of that, oh no, I do want to prove that I sound good, or I want to protect my reputation. But when you can do all four of these, like really do all four, that's where you start to get into mastery level. I'm not saying I'm there yet, because clearly, even though I just said those four things, no, man, I got stuff I need to work on. But I'm happy that I can feel peaceful and aware of those things. And I can also, it's easier, right? It's always easier to, when someone else has a problem, like we always can give advice to our friends, can't we? Right? But then it's like, okay, am I going to live by that too? And so that for me is what I strive to do. And at first, when I started teaching, man, I would be telling people to do stuff, and then I'd be like, oh my God, I'm not I'm not doing that. I had to start writing it down. I created books, I created volumes of information that I just wanted to live by. And I now get that this is really all, it's for me, right? First, I gotta make sure I practice what I preach. And that makes you more powerful, because then you're holding the frequency of what you share, right?
Yeah. And by frequency, do you mean that scale of consciousness thing from David R. Hawkins? Yeah. Yeah, is that the
Oh
one?
yeah, well you can say it like that. Yeah. Yeah, Hawkins. Woo-wee. But yeah, when I say it, I just mean like it's like telling someone you have a cigarette in your hand, you're smoking and you're telling your kid, "Hey, don't smoke." They're not going to listen to what you do. They're going to listen. I mean, they're not going to listen to what you say. They're going to listen to what you do. Children don't listen to what their parents tell them 90% of the time. They listen to the frequency or the actions and the vibration, right? Because everything we think and feel, that generates a frequency, right? And so yeah, David Hawkins scale, right? You want to live in like the higher frequencies and all that, but just even to simplify it, basically it's living and breathing and being what you truly believe in. And then when you teach that, you're in alignment with it. And when you're in alignment with it, it holds up way stronger than if you're not. And people can tell. It's kind of like someone getting up and singing, but in the mind, they're like, I hate myself. I hate myself. And they're like, la. And like everyone knows, even though they might be hitting the right notes, the frequency that they're giving out or the energy that they're giving out is like really awkward and no one enjoys it because they didn't. Does
Yeah,
that make sense?
it does. And I'm just thinking about the frequency, how the frequency changes at a gig, right? So I can talk about this David Hawkins stuff, and it's a bit complicated. I it is right. So to we know what low energy feels like, and we know what higher energy feels like. We know, when the teacher that we don't like and nobody likes comes into the room, and the atmosphere drops through the floor, right? Or when there's the buzz of excitement before the lights go down in the auditorium and it's clear that the band are coming, right? So there's this everybody's there's a certain level of buzz and excitement, but people are talking, and then the lights go out, and then it goes up a level, and then the lights come on and all the band are on, and the crowd go nuts. That's the sort of energy we're talking about, is it?
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to run a little theory by you in terms of um, how trauma uh, blocks this sense of oneness. So it's like a barrier. It puts a barrier between us and others. I, you had that felt sense of oneness as a kid, and you remember it. Uh, I may have had that felt sense of oneness, but I don't remember it. And that's why I asked you about the oneness thing, right? Because I I read this letter from my birth mother, like 10 years ago, 8 years ago, and I just I just cried. I just cried, and felt I felt at what somehow I felt at one with her through this this feeling that this belief that she didn't love me enough to keep me went. And when the belief went, the barrier went, and we were one. And then I thought, I've had that sense of oneness in concerts. I've had that sense of oneness in sports, in rugby stadiums. When I'm English and I'm listening to the Scottish national anthem, and I'm feeling a sense of oneness. And then the French national anthem comes on, and I've got that sense of oneness as well. And I'm English. I'm not Scottish or French, and it's it's a space, and I touched that same space. I touched it with my somatic. I experienced a woman like a month or so ago. Last time I saw her, touched the space, and that sense of oneness, that love, to me, kind of feels like the healing. Feels like the healing space.
I think you're spot on because people are giving their attention, which is the most beautiful gift that we can offer, to their connection. And whether, even though it's like, oh, this is my country, or oh, I can't wait for this music, or oh, we're all thinking the same thing in the same time in the same space. And so that, and then the oneness, the one mind, right? It it connects together. But that's always there. It's just, I feel like part of the game is let's get humans to get as scattered in their mind, lower their attention span, help them forget who they are so they're easier to market to, right? So they'll buy, like if you don't know your value or your worth, then you're going to want to buy clothes a certain way, look a certain way, keep this or that in your life to feel important. And you're going to not thrive as who you truly are. And I feel like it's part of the game to make us forget. But when we come together like this, and community is such a beautiful thing, right? And that's something like, it's interesting hearing you talk about like coming together and all these things. I'm thinking, yeah, I rarely, like, even though I'm so all about the oneness and stuff, as an adopted person, I just learned last year that it's a common trait for us to not have community. And that's something like I have, like, I've created small little communities for myself, but usually if I'm not the leader of that community, I feel weird being like part of the family of that. I don't always know my place. And like you say, when we have that trauma, right? Everyone has different styles of dealing with it. For me, it's avoidance. I just step back. I'm like, oh, let me go back, crawl under my rock, and not be a part of that because I don't belong. Because that's what I'm used to. I'm used to not belonging. I'm used to not being like everybody else. And with a name like Dot, already that name is like Dottie, right? You're this spot, like literally I was this black dot in a sea of white. Like it's almost comical, right? Just the reminder that you're different, you're wrong, you're wrong. And that's going to create a lot of trauma. And so, I've come to learn in my profession, because when people come to me, of course they want to learn how to sing. It's not just all flowers and butterflies. And usually I thought it would just be throat chakra being shut down. What I learned is your throat chakra is actually connected deeply to the heart chakra and all the other ones. And it's between the heart and the mind. And isn't that how we feel sometimes when we sing? Or even speaking, like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited, I want to do, and then you're like, oh my gosh, what are they going to think, right? Oh, this feels good. Oh no, what's happening? What's my voice doing? Oh yeah. And so see this cycle, and the voice is in between these two, and there's a battle between the heart and the mind, which is very similar to our lives. We live this life of trying to be in this world, and we know we're that spark. We want to be in our heart. But our brain tells us, you gotta earn, you gotta do this, you gotta make some of yourself because you're a piece of crap, or whatever you bought into, that the television or the media or your mom or your parents or whatever they projected onto you. So we're walking around with all this stuff, and at the end of the day, no, I want to heal. Oh, I am that love. I am everything that I've been looking for. I am all of those things. I just need to. What if I was still and I let my body unwind like you did in your moment of communication with someone, instead of like tightening and reacting and going, rah, or whatever. I didn't do that. You softened and you opened and you were vulnerable. And that vulnerability allows love to come in. Even if we just crack open a little bit, Now that love can get inside of that ship, right? And really let it soar. But if we don't have those vulnerable openings and let ourselves be seen and let ourselves feel that awkward feeling like, oh, what's this opening? You might feel it in your throat, you might feel it in your heart, you might feel it in your stomach. Wherever we feel those openings, we just like watch them. Or like, oh, I see my stomach's flipping out right now. Hi, stomach. And we know we're bigger than that. And that's where God can come in and bless us with all of the wonderful essence that is already who we are anyway. And that's where healing begins. And that, for me, has been really hard to learn. It's been really hard to learn. And I'm grateful that I feel like I'm just at the beginning of my journey. You know, and I've already been on this planet quite a few decades. We won't say how many, right? But hey, I got to make friends with the now, because that's really all I have. And I spent all my younger years going, oh, when I'm older, I'm going to do this and I got to be this by this age. And now I'm like, oh, I'm that past that age that I thought that I would have all this stuff. Can you relate to that, Simon? Like, did you ever think like, I mean, you've done a lot, so maybe you don't feel that way, but I feel like, oh, I'm barely getting started and oh well.
Yeah, yeah. I feel in some ways I've learned stuff, and in other ways I'm a complete beginner. Beginner's mind, as they say. You know,
Yeah.
opening up, curiosity. Because there's a danger. We have these things. I don't know whether you have them in America. They're called grumpy old men. And here in the UK, grumpy old men are very, very set in their ways. Their minds are set like concrete. Their habits are set like concrete. And I don't want to be like that.
God bless you. You see, and all that is a defense mechanism, right? And it's running off of an old world that doesn't exist anymore. I mean, if you're running like 1960s, 1970s, you're like running those old patterns.
It's 11 o'clock.
Well, there you go. I don't know if you heard that, but it was pretty loud. It's 11 o'clock.
It is.
So we're running these old patterns, right, in our body because we want to be right. We want to, we don't want to deal with that vulnerability. But the vulnerability is the secret to what leads to empowerment, right? And as a vocal empowerment coach, that's the message. That's what I've had to continue to learn. And no one, I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure most people, we don't love being vulnerable because it's very uncomfortable. Like you were saying earlier, it feels invasive, kind of, but the more we do it, the more it's like, oh my gosh, I'm safe. I'm still safe. The protective personality doesn't have to jump in to try to save me. I'm still alive. I made it through. I didn't get, and even if people come in and they're like, ah, oh, you suck, you're so dumb, blah, blah, blah. It's like, that's their pain. I don't have to take that on. I see who I am. And slowly we learn, like, I really am that spark. And I really am going to be safe no matter what. And now that we have this world with all of this social media and all these people, all these young ones, I bless their hearts. They've grown up with numbers and likes determining their value, what they think is their value. We of the older generation that didn't have all that social media crap when we were kids, we really need to help the younger ones because I mean, I know they were born equipped with more knowledge in some ways, so they're going to be okay, but not if they're running that old world like you talk about that the grumpy old men are set in, right?
Right.
So bless you for your openness and even doing this and helping people focus not on their wounds, but on the healing. And that's what I really love about what you share is that you don't want to focus on like I could talk about oh this bad stuff happened to me and da 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 da, but then I'm still making that alive. But when I talk about what heals me, what brings me joy, what brings me love, what that's a beautiful conversation, and that makes the frequency higher. And that's where the healing can really come in, because now our hearts are open, and that's what true love, unconditional, is.
Yeah, that feels like a fantastic place to bring it in. Um, and as always, listeners, check out the show notes to find out what Dot's doing in the world. And thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Simon. I really enjoyed our conversation today.
Yeah, me too. Lots of love, listeners. We'll see you soon. We won't see you soon.